Hello, I'm Natalia Rodriguez, and this is my Fortnite video game project, Hills of the Fairies. As soon as you start, you immediately jump into the plot of the game. The fairies need your help retrieving their magical artifact. The humans shattered it and scattered the pieces across the land. You have to find the pieces so they're no longer vulnerable to attack. The fairies also provide you with weapons and other supplies to keep you safe and healthy along your journey. As soon as you accept and exit the tutorial area, the fairy immediately starts to act a little bit suspicious. I went for a fantasy adventure style game that has 4 different levels that all connect back to the central point of the map. I went for a fantastical sort of otherworldly aesthetic to go along with the fairy theme. In my game, players will fight different enemies from wolves to cursed fairies. They will find different items like food and magical potions to keep their health up on their journey. And they'll find the 3 magical shards that the fairies need to reconstruct their artifact, and maybe even find some items that the fairies don't even know about. The first level is meant to introduce the player to the flow of the game. You can find your first shard in an abandoned house in a decidedly unmagical area. You have to fight through the wolves to get there. Just some basic enemies to get the player used to fighting with the sword. When you get to the house, you can read the journal on the side table and find it was abandoned by a family, one whose child has been taken by unknown forces. The journal entry is left quite hastily, implying that it didn't end well for them. Once you exit with the shard, you have to fight through even more wolves on your way out. Once you escape, you're met with the fairy, acting a little bit dismissively about your concern for the wolves, and sending you on your way to the next level. I didn't want things to get too stale or repetitive, so I made this level have a little bit of a different feel. There's a rolling boulder that you have to dodge, but other than that, it seems quite peaceful, until you get the shard. Then all hell breaks loose and you have to get out. I wanted this to be a very fast-paced area to keep it exciting and to keep the player from lingering too long in one area. The final shard is found in the maze. There are cursed fairies scattered throughout the entire maze, but the main way that you proceed is by defeating the main 3 rooms. After you defeat every single enemy in the room, you'll be able to move forward throughout the maze, but you'll never be able to move backwards. The center room of the maze where the shard is kept is like this as well, with a much more difficult brute that you have to defeat to get the final shard to spawn in. You can also find an enchanted iron sword with a note attached. This connects back to the abandoned house. The note is written by an old woman who says her father gave her this sword before she was taken by the fairies. This sword is much more powerful than the one you're given at the start and cuts through the fairies very easily. It also tells you to be wary about whatever the fairies are planning and to play along with whatever charade they're doing until the last second. In the 4th and final level, it's revealed that the fairies are actually going to use the artifact to get revenge and wipe out the humans. You have to retrieve the artifact and escape, fighting through all the fairies that might spawn in your way. There's ranged fairies up high, and the more areas that you fall into or cross through, the more fairies that spawn to fight you. If a player even falls from a certain area, they have the chance of spawning more enemies that they have to fight to get out. If a player ever gets overwhelmed, there is an area underneath the place where the artifact is kept, where you can find the remnants of the humans who fought against the fairies before. It is on a timer, so you can't stay there forever, but it should provide enough time for players to get their health back up and recoup. On top of that, there's also notes that are left to leave a little bit of information about the humans that fought the fairies. They locked themselves in there using a spell from the wizard, a temporary solution, but they were also able to use another spell that made them more powerful. In-game, this is called the damage amplifier, and used along with the enchanted iron sword, you're able to cut through enemies in basically one hit. I made the artifact a requirement for being able to exit. Monsters will spawn on the platform whenever you jump onto it, as well as spawning onto the platform whenever you pick the article up. It's impossible to make the jump from the platform to the exit, and it will also make more monsters spawn in. On making your escape, more and more monsters will spawn, trying to block your exit. However, once you get through the door, it locks right behind you, sealing them in their area. Upon escaping, you reach the wizard's hut. She has some choice words to say to you. She's in a little rundown house above the fairies' domain. guiding the character through her house just to sort of get an idea for the human element of the game. You eventually get to her study and are able to drop the artifact off. And that completes the game.
Hello, my name is Maria Jose Sokolic, and this is my Fortnite creative demo for my game called Backfire. All my game is based in comedy and absurd, and is happening in just one location, that is a castle, on purpose built without making any sense. I'm going to have around the castle extra bricks, extra walls. I'm going to have some decoration that can be as a movie theater or a hot dog cart, and other elements that they're going to mismatch one with another, because what I'm trying with this game is make my player don't expect the next step. Also, for building all the challenges during the game and all the storyline, I use pop-up messages, triggers, I use bombs, some obstacles to make it a little bit more fun, a couple item spawners, and some a creature spanner too for the final challenge of my game. I create a principal character that's going to explain part of the game to my player, and is going to guide the next part after the beginning of my game. My game is going to start with a treasure hunt, and this is all with pop-up messages. They're going to have this riddle with a little bit of comedy on them. After my player do all this riddle, everything is going to be for open the door of my main castle, and there is where my player is going to start this journey of unexpected. The main goal is to these things of there's a bomb and really there's not any bomb, and my character is going to tell the next instructions to my player. Then I'm going to play with his mental model, creating a real bomb that's going to explode. But the good thing is that my players are never going to lose their life as they go through the game, because I put on purpose they can reload their health in a period of time. After the obstacles, I put a bow and arrow, but just with one arrow, so you have to kill one monster. And then you have a real gun that is going to play the last challenge of my game, that is going to be with a lot of monsters, and figure out what is the next step for finish my game. I wanted to play with the slurfish thing at the beginning, so I can build a whole storyline from the beginning, a middle, and an end of my game. And this is going to be how my player is going to win, and that's all. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy it.
The city. Cold, dank, and unforgiving. It's infested with vermin, probably why they call it Blight City.
Afternoon. My name is Melanie Gilbert. In this world, you will come in contact with the most vile of criminals, and the citizens oblivious to the blight around them. You Detective Richard Valentino are on a mission. Find the evidence to convict your nemesis, mafia boss and lord of crime himself, Louis Fettuccini, before getting caught by his men. And careful. In this city, you never know who might be on the wrong side. With your trusty assistant Mabel, navigate the city, find clues, and retreat to safety. The future of the city is on the line. Can you save it? Getting into the gameplay of the story, you start off in your office, where your assistant woke you up from a carb-loaded nap. You probably should lay off the donuts, detective. At least you quit smoking death. Seriously? Death is in the name! Mabel gives you the task to locate evidence from the district attorney's office. I included voice lines to give her more character.
Well, good morning, detective.
Furthermore, throughout the game, jazz plays in the background, just like it does in the movies. I tested this on many others and did some research on the topic on how music can affect the brain. All seem to have a similar experience, that this music makes you feel like a badass. But can you prove it? Sneak into City Hall, get past the guard, and get the evidence. But as soon as you have it, be warned, the Mafia will be after you. I added many new details since my last update. Trees, sidewalks, NPCs, more guards, and story elements such as advertisements, logos, and window stores, just to give the illusion of a busy and profitable city. The ads were my favorite and allowed for forced perspective in some aspects of my map. I am especially fond of the cigarette ad. Death sticks were my substitute for cigarettes, because while it was created in Unreal Engine, the actual game runs in Fortnite, and Fortnite has very strict guidelines when it comes to adult content. Swearing is also banned and replaced by hearts no matter what I do. So there goes some of my jokes. Because of that, I had to work my way around it, and I did this through constructing new world building aspects of the game. It's not what I wanted, but it was what I needed to give that extra element of escapism. Characters are mostly mannequins, which was a huge contrast from my last update. While in the previous game I used Fortnite-specific characters, I wanted this game to not be like Fortnite. So the mannequins were the only option. I do have one metahuman, that is Mabel, who I constructed based on actresses from similar movies. The only aspect of this game I kept close to Fortnite were some models that fit, and some comedic dialogue that's often found in Fortnite-specific games. Everything else was stripped away in Unreal, like neon signs and the dieter, now Automat, which I thoroughly enjoyed making. The gameplay is still the same as before, with some minor details to challenge the player, and further immerse them into the game. I hope to keep working on this game, perhaps add cutscenes and a final boss. At the moment, I will stick to this game of hide and seek. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my game as much as I enjoyed creating it. And with that, I will see you later. Goodbye.
I'm Jordan Thomas, and this is Logan's Lore. Building off of my game in Unreal, Logan's Lore is also inspired by What Remains of Edith Finch. I took inspiration from the family saga-like gameplay and narrative-based storytelling to develop my own game. Aesthetically, the games are somewhat similar as well, as they both have a more realistic look, even though What Remains of Edith Finch is a bit more illustrative. The sound in the game is peaceful and natural to give the immersive effect that the player is kind of isolated in nature. The aesthetic of the world, which is realistic, the sounds, and the gameplay all work together to evoke a flow zone-like experience for the player. The game aims to set the player on a mission to find out what happened to Logan's mother, who left when she was young. Through collecting and reading journal entries left behind by the mother, the player will uncover the mystery of why Logan's mother left. In the game, I've developed a sequence where the player has to collect journals to unlock the house with a collectible counter. Using the scripts from class, I was able to put my own spin on it by changing the sounds. Because this is a narrative-based game that is mainly trying to evoke narrative immersion, I didn't want to make unlocking the door too difficult. I've also developed a house that adds immersion and a greater sense of world building for the player. Jumping into the back end, an element that I added to the game that was not discussed in class was interacting with an item. I used scripting to allow the player to read one of the journals that they collected outside. This increased the narrative aspect of the game by providing some storytelling. Here you can see my C# scripts. The last element that I added was scripted audio triggers that are prompted when a player collects the journals around the world. By adding these audio dialogues, I was able to increase the narrative aspect of the game and make the journals and their locations more meaningful. So now let's jump into some gameplay.
When Mom and I would play hide and seek, this used to be my favorite hiding spot. She would always pretend to be surprised when she found me here. I remember when I was 5 years old, I tried jumping off the swing and chipped my front tooth, busting my lip. Mom was so scared by the amount of blood, but she still tried to make me laugh so I wouldn't cry. One time I saw Mom and Dad talking out here on this bench while I was eating lunch at the kitchen table. I remember I could hear them yelling all the way from inside the house.
November 22nd. Logan asked about my family today. I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth. I think it's best that she'll never know. December 3rd. I saw the figure again. This time it wasn't a dream. November.
Hello, my name is Kristen Aguilar, and this is my final game demo. So my game is called Buscando la Luz y Memorias. And it is based off of Day of the Dead or Dia de los Muertos. Here we have a UI pop-up explaining that to the player to build a narrative immersion. And so this is where the character will begin their journey through this game. And so this game takes place in a graveyard in a calm nighttime environment. I really want to encourage the player to explore, and so you can see to build the ambiance for Day of the Dead, there are marigolds about on the floor. And as mentioned, this takes place during night, so there's a very subtle light. And so here we begin our journey as the player approaches a gravestone. And as we approach the grave, we can see a UI pop-up telling the story of who this grave belonged to. This image is actually of my grandmother to build sort of a familial connection into my game. These gravestones are actually prefabs, which I made using various meshes to build a Day of the Dead aesthetic. And as the player approaches, we can also see that they are collecting skulls as cued by the Vida audio track and the skull counter near the top and the hints at the bottom of the screen. And as previously mentioned, there is a backing track which mimics the sounds of old Mexican music to further build the environment. And so now the player will approach the gate despite not having enough skulls to meet the conditions of the door to showcase what will happen if they do not have the sufficient amount of skulls for the gate. And as you heard, a jingle sound plays telling the player that they do not have the sufficient amount of skulls to open the gate. And so now the player will go collect 2 more skulls. And so now that the player has the sufficient amount of skulls, they will be able to pass through the gate onto the other side where they will be met by a church and firefly particles. And as the player approaches the church, they will be met with the ending pop-ups and the game will end. Here we have the overall map of the game, in which it is split into the beginning, the 4 different graveyards, and the ending of the church. Here we have the beginning of the game, which has the first-person controller camera and the 2D audio player, which plays the background music throughout the game. Zooming out, we are able to see the canvas, which has the various images and UI pop-ups for the game, which have been scripted using a script not taught to us. Here is one of the many lampposts, which is a prefab made using a lamp mesh and a spotlight. And these are located throughout the graveyard to give a soft lighting to the world. And this is in addition to the directional light coming from the moon. And as we zoom in, you can see these trigger boxes for the music and the UI pop-ups for the ending of the game. We can also see the particles to build the ambiance of the game. And so that concludes my video demo. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I hope you have a good break. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Rashay Smith, and this is my final demo for ADM 502, Maris and Gale in the Chaos Gauntlet. The aesthetics of my game were heavily inspired by the Battle Nexus episode in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2003. I created a desert environment that features a 2D skybox with bright saturated colors and large cliffs on the horizon, similar to that specific episode. My desert landscape is composed of many painted textures, however, my temple/dungeon is the main location for the game's narrative setting. This dungeon model was found in the Unity Asset Store made by Dan Props, and is a component I took from my other major inspiration, the game Fireboy and Water Girl by Oslo Albit. The dungeon has a low poly look to it, so I followed that style when designing my 8-bit-esque 2D elements and choosing my font. Following the MDA framework, we move to dynamics. My game is a multiplayer that allows both player 1 and player 2 to play at the same time. I aim to instigate a flow state by having the players collect a certain amount of daggers to open the door to the next section. This is signaled to the players via audio cues and text hints. Audio plays a heavy role in establishing the narrative of this game as well. Johan Huizinga spoke on the concept of the magic circle in his book Homo Ludens. This magic circle is what allows players to forgo regular logic and accept the new reality that the game world has put them in. Finally, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi spoke on the concept of flow states and how they cannot be achieved without a challenge aspect. So I added eyeball enemies to the dungeon that roam around the area aimlessly until the player enters a certain radius, and then they rush towards the player to deal damage. It is this magic circle that allows the players to immediately accept this reality and jump into the challenge of escaping the dungeon. With the final portion being mechanics, I'll just focus on describing the main components: player movement, health and damage, and audio cues. For player movement, player 1, Maris, uses keyboard inputs of the arrow keys to move, right shift to jump, and the mouse to look around. Player 2, Gale, uses WASD to move, space to jump, and I set the player 2's camera to only move when left shift is held in combination with the mouse moving. Moving on to health, using integers and is set so that both players die if only one player reaches 0 HP. When the players are at 20 HP, they trigger an audio cue for that specific character to alert the other player that they're about to die. The last script I want to mention is my play audio script. Because I have 2 first-person character controls, both require audio sources, and this was inhibiting my audio cues from playing for both characters. To solve this, I created an empty object with this audio manager script. Then I called that coroutine in the specific script that requires the audio cue to reference back to the audio manager, and it plays the cue from the empty object. And now we'll move on to the gameplay footage.
Hey, Player 1, I'm Maris. Hit the back arrow to ready up.
Yo, Player 2, it's Gale. Hit A to ready up.
Ooh!
Let's do this.
Gale, can you hear me? I can't believe they put us in different rooms.
Ha! Joke's on them if they think keeping us apart will do them any good. But yeah, this seriously sucks.
We've been trapped in this dungeon for too long, Gale. And all for some worthless treasure hunt.
I agree, Maris. Let's ditch this place.
If we're going to escape, we'll need plenty of weapons.
How many is plenty?
We still need more weapons to defend ourselves, Gale.
I don't think you know how daggers work, but okay. Come on, Maris, we gotta move on.
Gale, they're swarming me. Ooh, good work, Gale.
Ouch! I'm dying over here, Maris. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Thanks, Maris.
Dang it.
I hate you all. Come on, Maris, we gotta move on.
We made it.
Freedom!
With this game and my previous works in this course, I wanted to explore the capabilities of split-screen controls and having 2 people use the same device to affect the medium. I believe this method could work to create what I am calling multiplayer movies, a narrative film or animation that is told through the perspective of many and experienced and affected simultaneously via groups of 2 or more people. As my graduate research continues, I hope to get closer to utilizing this gameplay element within my animations to create a more interactive experience. And that concludes my demo. Thank you all for watching.